All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the audience, the big audience response. Amy, you want to call a roll? Vin, call roll? Someone call roll.
Chair Bauer,
Here.
Board Member Bernstein,
Here.
Board Member Coher,
Here.
Board Member McKinnon,
Here.
Board Member Pease,
Here.
Board Member Shepherd,
Here.
Board Member Wimmer, absent.
Good, thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Christian Pease to the board. He is a longtime resident of Palo Alto, has a lot of experience here, and he's also done some historic preservation work in Sonoma County. So welcome, and we're glad that you are willing to join us. Okay. I'd like to change the order of the agenda, since we have only one item that we need to review, and we can do the other stuff as housekeeping. I'd like to move action item number 4 up to number 1, and then we can just take the agenda as said. Is that okay? While you're doing that, Amy, I'll ask if there are any oral communications from anyone who wants to speak on anything other than our agendized items. Not yet. And there are no speakers here, so. There it is. All right, so item number 4 is a report documenting the completed facade restoration rehabilitation project as compliant with Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and affirming the HRB's 2018 recommendation for reclassification of 526 Waverly Street to Historic Inventory Category 2 from Category 3. So, Amy, you want to?
Sure. Good morning.
Morning.
Amy French, Chief Planning Official. This report transmits the historic structures report that the applicant provided resources for the city to have retained or prepared by Page and Turnbull, serving as the city's on-call consultant for items like this. So what happened while 2 of you were not on the board, notably Member Pease and Member Shepherd, was, I believe Shepherd was not yet on our board in 2018. When this project came forward, this project being the rehabilitation and restoration of 526 Waverly, formerly the Toy and Sport World, I believe is the name of the business that was there for many, many decades. Of course, the owner is here represented in the audience, so is available for questions, those of you who are not as familiar with the project. But those others, 4 of you who were familiar with the project back in 2018, when the board considered the project and provided a support for a recommendation to upgrade the building from a Category 3 to a Category 2. So, the upshot is the work's been done according to the plans that were approved through our architectural review process with HRB input and recommendation. And we're here now today to reconfirm that recommendation so that we can then go proceed to the City Council. And so on the screen, I put a slide. Basically, what we're doing is confirming the HRB's 2018 recommendation, and we have 4 votes to do that. Those of you who have studied this can also vote now, I think. And then these are the 2 things that the historic structure report did, which was document the completed improvements and also looked at the rear addition that was put on after the Burge Clark building was built, and the mezzanine, to allow consideration of a future potential project, which has not come in as a project. So with that, I'll say that, again, the owners in the audience, if anyone has questions about the project or questions of me, please.
Okay, I have just one procedural question. I presume that what we should do at the conclusion of our discussion is to create a motion that verifies that what you have just described, what the Page and Turnbull report describes, so that the council can see that we support this change in category. Is that right?
That would be helpful, and also if you want to commit as chair to being available to attend the city council hearing on this. It's a consent calendar item, so it won't be a hearing necessarily, but it will be on the consent agenda. And so if there's, we can work together on dates, but we're looking to a March date with council. So I don't know if there's availability there, but sometimes it's nice to have an HRB member.
I can talk to you about that afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, John, if you'd like to say something, it's not required, but because we've got a record, but we'd be happy to hear from you.
Sure. Good morning. John Schenk, representing Thwaites Brothers. And I won't be long. Well, I'll keep going, but I wanted to thank you all for the work that you do. I want to thank staff. Amy's been absolutely fantastic, helping to guide me through this process. It's the first time that we've taken on a project like this. Well, first time for me and first time for the Thwaites Brothers in a few decades. And as owners of lots of properties in the downtown, the Thwaites family's got a few pictures on the back wall and has been here for about 120 some odd years in ownership. And we do care deeply about the broad health of the community in the downtown. And part of that is the historic fabric that is a meaningful part of our community. And for that reason, we're motivated to take over ownership from the Hoffacker family, the original developers of the building, and to see through this rehabilitation. And we're really excited about it. I may have shared before, but there are many times I am currently, I'll go out there and I stand in front of the building thinking, what's next? How are we going to do this? What would the right tenant be? And people can probably tell that I have something to do with the building, and they will stop and often say, thank you, it's beautiful, these sorts of things. And I think that there's some personal reward in that, but it's really important to us to have this happen in the community over and over. So we are currently analyzing our own portfolio, and we own some other very old buildings. Where can we do this? And I think it's neat that the ordinance, the codes, have these sections that we're going through now where there's, in a way that we align ourselves, because it's a costly, time-consuming process. But because it's a win-win, there's this process to win a TDR, if you will, sort of thing that helps align us. So it's just not a burden on the owner to take it on all by themselves in a way. And I really do appreciate that piece of what the community, I think, all holds hands around. And the last thing I'll leave you with is something, and I don't know if it'll be the right venue for this, but as we went through this process, there's a piece of the code that I think is worth exploring. And maybe it'll be with you guys, maybe it'll be staff and city attorney's office sort of thing, trying to riddle it out. But it's in 18-060E1. And I think the way we had looked at it is it's an opportunity for us to further align around properties that are historic, where something's been added on to it. And the addition is not historic and takes away from the historic value of the building. And my reading of it says that, hey, if you remove that area to restore the historic, it becomes, I think, technically exempt area or something where you're able to move it. So you don't just lose part of your building to restore the historic piece. You could move that square footage. Again, following all the historic regulations and everything else to the degree that were even possible, but it gives you that opportunity. And there are some who are interpreting the language to not say that. And I think that becomes a disalignment around, we're trying to find ways to restore these historic buildings. So I mentioned it, maybe, you guys peek at it on your own time. It's something I'm exploring with Amy, and we'll continue down the path, because I just think I truly believe within the community, there's lots of rifts and different perspectives on things, but I think around restoring historic buildings, I think we're all on the same page, and I think those words might need clarification, either way, but I think we would all agree that it ought to go toward let's restore the entirety of the historic building where possible. Anyway, that's it. I thank you all for your time and your assistance as well as we went through the 526 Waverly project. Thank you.
Martin, question
Yeah,
for John?
thank you, John. Can you repeat that code section?
Sure.
again?
1806E1.
Thank you.
You bet.
That's-
Thank you all.
That's, hold on, don't go away.
Yes, sorry.
Anyone have questions for John?
Questions? No.
Okay, one question I have is, the addition on the back, I know is a secondary addition. Do you know what the date of that addition
It's in the report. I believe it's in the 40s. I forget the
Right.
exact date.
Yeah, it doesn't represent an historic, according to the Secretary of Interior standards, because it's been there for 50 years, even though it wasn't part of the original
Right.
building, it does get some consideration as an historic addition. Now, what you do with that and how you move forward with the next phase, I just wanted to be sure you're aware that even though that portion of the building is not part of the original building, it has some of its own, it has standing on its own. It's actually not attractive and isn't seen from the street, but just be aware of it, that's all.
Very fair. And just so you know, Chair Bauer, is as I bring this up, that was the issue that was in our brain as we looked at it. But I really think whether that happens or it doesn't, just more globally, if it were only 20 years old, and I don't think that's the issue that we're struggling with, it's being able to remove this area and it becomes where you can move it to restore the historic.
Sure.
I appreciate the
Yeah, just-
nuance of the age of that addition.
I think, Martin and other board members, that's an accurate statement about the addition. After 50 years, it becomes
Yeah, it
significant on its own.
does add some level of significance because of its age. And
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be an interesting one to explore another day around, and I think we even had asked Page and Turnbull, maybe not, I forget what's in the report, to kind of look at that piece. And then we've got how do you weigh the balance of historic significance? And there is a neat piece, the back of, as Burge Clark has on many of the buildings, where we can find similar, almost identical details on some various buildings used in different ways. The rear of the building, I just literally a couple of months ago was walking down the back alley behind, where are we here? The Coldwell Banker building now, the old
Right.
blue chalk, the back of that two-story building with the metal sash windows of 2 stories. It is the back of 526 Waverly's original back.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, being able to restore that, as much as it's at the back of the building, but it's, maybe someday it's a big city public parking lot, or maybe it's something, but, I think the back can be neat to look at as well. But I did think it was funny to walk by and see, wait, that's the back of Waverly,
Well-
originally.
And the front of that building is almost identical in
Very similar.
its style of having what appear to be 3 separate storefronts, even though they're all one interior space.
That's right.
Yeah, so clearly Burge Clark had a style that he was working
It did, it did.
on. All right, Martin, you had a,
yeah, to your point about that code section, we have on our agenda today is to put together suggestions for our retreat. And so maybe our board, when we come to that agenda item, we can discuss if we want to put that on the retreat.
good idea.
But only do it if you really want to have a fun time on the retreat, because looking at code sections is so fun.
That's what we do. Any other questions for John while we are still in the influence phase? If that is, good morning, Margaret, thank you, glad you could make it. It's all right. So I think we'll close the the discussion period,
you.
bring it back to the board, and have a discussion about the issues here. Michael?
Thank you, Chair Bauer. It's somewhat of a rarity that we see a project that's classified as a restoration here. Most of our projects are rehabilitations. And I'm quite pleased to see that, I don't know, I can't think of another one that was a restoration that we've entered into right here. But I don't know how the board feels about it, but maybe we should look at the categorizing of this as a restoration rather than a restoration/rehabilitation. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but it might give a stronger case for moving it up to a Category 2 from a Category 3.
That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
We're actually moving it up to a Category 2.
Yeah, I know we are, but I think it would make the case stronger when it goes to council if we're calling it a restoration. But how's the rest of the board feel about that?
Well, I don't know. Any other board members want to weigh in on that?
Is the definition of the categories in our packet today?
We're calling it a restoration/rehabilitation, which is
Right.
kind of a locally made-up type of definition right here. I don't know if the Secretary of Interior Standards really recognize like a dual status.
May I
Amy.
jump in and call your attention to the historic resource evaluation? It's packet page 24. If we want to start considering definitions or what have you, on that page in the first paragraph, at least Page and Turnbull is saying the subject property underwent a facade rehabilitation to return it to original design. So that's a firm that is well qualified that uses the word rehabilitation. In the staff report, I referred to it in both tenses because, the types of things that were done to the facade, I think may have included both types of construction.
Yeah, I think when I read through the report, I recall that when Emily Vance analyzed this, she categorized it as a rehabilitation, at least in one paragraph that I read right of her report, her analysis.
It might be useful to know the difference between the definition of those two words. I think it qualifies on both levels, and I have no strong feelings about using both or using one. It seems to me that restoration would suggest restoring what was there, and rehabilitation would suggest that you are adding back what was there.
Well,
So I think you can either do one or the other.
rehabilitation, in my understanding, is bringing a historic property back into use for modern times and still preserving the character-defining features, the essentials of it.
Yeah, I'm happy to adopt your suggestion if the board feels that that's appropriate. I don't think there's a wrong way to do this, and maybe you're suggesting that we use just one term.
Yes.
Will simplify the council consideration. Anyone else? Kristen?
I support that idea.
Debbie? Okay, Debbie supports it. Margaret, any opinions?
Yeah, I think those two terms are used so closely together, and a lot of the Secretary of the Interior Standards guideline or standard points fall under both of those categories most commonly. So I think it's a really interesting topic of discussion to really pinpoint which is which. But I do think that it feels like this is more of a restoration.
Fine, so Roger, you have any feelings on this? Okay, so I think the board agrees with your suggestion, so let's just move forward calling this a restoration. simplify things. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah, I would always just go to a source document to see how our, this expert firm that we have refers to it. So there's another, packet page 34 also refers to restoration of the original French doors on the second floor due to the fact that the windows would be mostly concealed behind restored iron balconies. That's a restoration according to Page and Turnbull. They elsewhere use rehabilitation. So I think it's fair to be able to call it both, but
Sure.
yeah, that's.
John has something.
Aloud what our owner has provided as well, just before you vote maybe on that. Rehabilitation, according to the Secretary of Interior Standards, acknowledges the need to alter or add to a historic property to meet continuing or changing uses while retaining the property's historic character. Restoration depicts a property at a particular period of time in its history while removing evidence of other periods.
So actually, I think restoration would be a more accurate description because the project removed a lot of unsightly and inappropriate.
And if you do a categorization as a restoration, you do have to be very clear on the period of significance.
Yeah, I think the period of significance would be, what, the 20s when the building was constructed, originally constructed?
Yeah. It's in the report somewhere.
Yeah. So, I don't know, maybe we're getting too far down in the weeds here. Maybe we should use both terms.
Well, the only thing I can find is that with the word rehabilitation, it can include some kind of modification from what it was originally.
Yeah.
Whereas restoration is clearly maintaining what was there originally, but with rehabilitation, it can also include some modification.
Okay,
And
so,
I guess that's a question, has it been modified from its original? I know that you were playing around with the arches and the location of the door and what have you, so that if there is a modification from what is absolutely original as documented by the original drawings, then it would also include the rehabilitation word, I think.
right, so the one thing I noticed on the project is the ironwork, which is true to the style in the drawings, but is not detailed anywhere by Burge Clark. This simply doesn't, there's no detailing that exists with dimensions. The ironwork is slightly larger than what is apparent on other Burge Clark projects. In other words, the ironwork on 527 has 1-inch corner posts. This is so insignificant in terms of the fabric of this building, but I notice it as a builder because it's a little bit different. And that, I'm perfectly comfortable with that being a differentiation, compatible but differentiation from the original. We don't have any originals, but we have other buildings. My point here is that, I think you're right, there have been very small changes. So we're not really restoring what's there because a lot of what was there was removed. We're putting back what was in kind, creating the same stylistic feeling of the facade. That's how I guess I would describe it. And so it is both restoration of what was there and refurbishment in terms of bringing something new but slightly different. Is that a fair?
And I have one more packet page to steer you to, just in case you want more source data. Page and Turnbull did tackle this. Packet page 38, 39 says Emily Vance's review found the proposed changes would meet the standards for restoration. While the project was reviewed as a restoration undertaking and viewed favorably at the time, the completed project is more applicable to the standards for rehabilitation due to its use of some new components in a similar but not exact appearance to the original design.
Okay.
So that's,
All right. So I think you're.
I would say from a pure standpoint, rehabilitation is probably the more correct interpretation of what is being done here, rather than, somebody could say you didn't really restore it because you didn't bring back everything exactly the way it was.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. Martin?
I'm just smiling with familiarity about the topic of restoration and rent. An example of restoration is that when the Doges of Venice repair Palazzo Strozzi, that's a restoration, where it's unchanged and it's just repaired. But if there are any changes to any kind of detailing, yeah, that's a rehabilitation, and well supported, and I think the board will agree that it's a good this is a good project. Yeah.
Any other comments? So are we agreed, we can put this into the motion, but we'll use the term restoration, I'm sorry, rehabilitation to describe the project. Okay, other comments? Any other comments? I would like to just note part of Page and Turnbull's analysis here, because I thought that they did an excellent job of first discussing eligibility for the California Register for Historic Resources. And of the 4 criteria that they evaluated, criteria 1, which is events, criteria 2, persons, criteria 3, architecture, and criteria 4 is information potential, that in criteria 1, 3, and 1 and 3, they meet the requirements. 4 doesn't really apply, and criteria 2 does not meet significance. But that's a very strong evidence that this is indeed California Registry eligible. And then the second thing I wanted to just put into the record, which of course is there, but reiterate, is that the standards for rehabilitation, which we deal with all the time, starting on page 39 of our packet, rehabilitation standard 1 is the property is used for its historic purpose. 2, the historic character of the property will be retained. 3, each property is recognized as a physical record of its time. 4, even though properties change over time, those changes have acquired historic significance of their own right, thus the addition in the back may be captured by this. 5, the distinctive features, finishes, and techniques are preserved. Standard 6 is deteriorated historic features, doesn't really apply. Standard 7, chemical or physical treatments were not used, that doesn't apply. Standard 9, new additions or alterations shall not destroy the historic character. We don't have that issue here. And 10, we don't have any archaeological features. So of the 10, this project meets 6, I think, of these, and the others don't apply. And that's another very strong statement about why this project and why this recategorization is not only appropriate, but should be moved forward by council. So, having said that, if there are no other questions or statements, can I have a motion to approve this renovation? Reaffirm our earlier. Oh, so first of all, it's that the evidence and the project outcome now qualifies this building to be categorized as a Category 2 building on our register instead of Category 3. Is that appropriate? Anybody want to make that motion? Yeah. Michael?
Make a motion. I make a motion that we approve the project, moving it from a Category 3 to a Category 2. It does meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, as evidenced by the reports from Page and Turnbull and other analysis that were performed.
Great. The second?
I second it.
All right. Any further discussion? Martin?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to comment to the owner's representative, Mr. Schenk, and architect, Mr. Pop. I think under the stewardship of you and your team, excellent job.
Okay, no further comments. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, it's unanimous. Thank you, John. Nice job. All right, so we will now go back to our agenda as listed, and there was one change, and that's the agenda order. No other changes or additions to the agenda? No. Okay, so let's
No other
move on
changes.
to election of a vice chair. With the loss of Brendan, Corey as our vice chair, we need to have somebody fill that chair. I'm open to suggestions and nominations.
I'd like to nominate Deborah.
I appreciate that. Margaret, you are the one who so often puts the motion forward and frames it well, and you seem to have a grasp of parliamentary procedure, or whatever it is that we call it here. Do you have any interest in doing this? I feel I'm too new.
Well, actually, I have already served as vice president during one term, so I would be happy to allow someone else that golden opportunity to do so.
I'll help you.
Okay, well, I guess I need some instruction or training, but I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so any other nominations? I mean, we can have more than one big selection, but I'm quite pleased if Debbie wants to step into that position. We need a second. Do I hear a second for Debbie as a?
I second it.
Any further conversation, board? Not seeing any. All in favor of Debbie being the vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. I'm assuming it's unanimous. Great, thank you. It's not a big job.
Just one question on that. What is the term, is it till, for this year, or I forget?
I would just say it's at the pleasure of the board, basically, the chair and the board.
Okay.
Because the HRB does not meet twice a month, every month for a
Right.
year, we have less meetings. And so it's, in the past, it's, the person has served beyond a year just because of that fact of infrequent meetings.
I would say that anyone who wants to take over the chair's position, I would be happy to step aside. I have done it for 2 years now, and because of, the small number of meetings we have in the past extended it. I'm happy to stay as chair, but I'm willing to step aside because I've done it for a long time.
David,
Anyone?
I think you're doing an excellent job, and I think you should
Thank
be
you.
our fearless leader from here
Okay.
on.
Well, I appreciate that vote of confidence, but I just want to make it clear that anyone else who would like to step up, I'm certainly happy to step aside. Okay, so thank you, we're done taking care of that. City official reports.
First of all, we have our, we prepare annual reports, and one of them is the CLG report, Certified Local Government Report, which, as a certified local government, we are obligated to turn in a report every year that declares what, go ahead.
Can I interrupt? This is tab 3 in our booklet for
sure.
board members. Sorry, I just wanted to make this clear.
Packet page 7. The Certified Local Government Annual Report summarizes what trainings the HRB has, members have undertaken during the reviewing period of October 2018 through September 2019. So those of you who are here can report out what trainings you did. And I will capture that in the report that I prepare and send. The deadline this year is much later than it was last year. Last year it was in February, I believe. This year it's in April, so we have a bit more time. So I haven't yet packaged that report up to share with you because of that deadline delay. So, I'm thinking the March packet for the HRB will have the report completed. So those of you who haven't turned in, what you've done as far as any kind of training related to architecture, such, please do send that in to Vin or myself, and I can capture that. I also report in this report what the general activities have been. Have we done any nominations? Have we, undertaken any studies? So in this report, it will declare that we received 2 awards for our Eichler design guidelines that had been packaged up the year before in 2018. And we'll also declare all of the historic resource evaluations we've been doing since the comp plan was adopted in the end of 2017. We've done quite a number of historic resource evaluations, case by case, as folks come in to either tear down an existing home or add on to an existing home that is potentially eligible for California Register. So we've done a number of those. I'll also report out on the number of meetings we had and anything else that's of interest in the world of historic preservation. I did include in your item 3, tab 3, everything that I received from the state. Starting with packet page 10, read this first, it says. This is to it's the how-to that says when it's due and all of that. And then the following piece is the annual report template. So this is what I will be filling out, this form. And so you've seen these in past years, and you'll see it again in next month's packet.
So I notice in that, that page 10 of our packet down at the bottom, reminder number 3, in order to compete for a 2021 CLG grant, you have to have submitted your annual report by no later than April. What about a grant? As you noted on page 8, we had talked about a modern era context, a grant to do that review, and we've also got unfinished Mills Act work to do. Can we get that grant in
Maybe
there?
this is the year, right? If there's a groundswell of support and bandwidth and all of that, depending on, I know this grant application we filled out before but didn't turn in. There was estimates on, the amount of time it would take on staff's end and a consultant. So we can touch base again with a consultant and see, double check that, the resource there, and speak with our director about putting that on the work program if that's of interest to proceed.
My recollection is this board is very supportive of that endeavor, and if it, maybe it would be useful for you and me to meet with the director.
Yep.
And if need be, we can go to council. I'd be happy to talk to council. Go to a council meeting and talk this up. I think it's an important thing to do. It's a requirement, as I remember, to do every 10 years, do some kind of survey. And of course, we haven't done one since 1998. So we're a little behind on that. And we've done the application, if I remember correctly. So we're really talking about just moving it forward. And I would imagine the amount of money we're saving by not hiring a permanent full-time planner can easily offset some of the cost of this. So let's, you and I get together and move that forward.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so the other part of this tab 3 is to share with you the comprehensive plan implementation annual report, because there are items in there regarding historic preservation. So I'll go ahead and proceed with that. Last night, the Planning and Transportation Commission heard from staff regarding the progress that's been made on the comprehensive plan programs and the housing element programs and where we are in that. So I'll just skim through this information, but if you wanted to do a deeper dive there, you could go to the city's website and look at the Planning and Transportation Commission staff report. I'll just give you a taste of that today. So basically, the comprehensive plan annual report has the historic preservation programs. There are 410 programs altogether in the comprehensive plan, and we reported out that 18% of those are completed or partially complete. We're just at the very beginning, basically the first 2 years of a comprehensive plan that goes till 2030. So we have a few more years to get these things accomplished. The housing element report talks about the work where we are towards our regional housing needs assessment numbers. You've probably heard of those. This gives an overview of where we are. We're 62% of the way into the housing cycle. These are some other stats over here. 107 new housing units were added in 2019. We are getting quite a few more accessory dwelling units since we passed some regulations that eased up on some of these things.
What does RHNA stand for?
Regional Housing Needs Assessment. So this is something that comes out every several years about what's expected. We expect a new report coming out that will vastly increase the number of housing units that we're expected to produce in the city. So that's coming up. So here are some stats for you. So here is a summary of the comp plan. So we do have, these are what's called elements, the required elements of a city's general plan. We call it the comprehensive plan. This is how many elements that we have studied in this annual report. Some of these are required elements, such as housing. Housing has a 7-year cycle, so every 7 years we produce a housing element that will update everything. So over here on this side of the screen, we have the number of programs. And so the land use, where there are 63 programs of the total of 410, those 63 include the historic preservation programs that appear in the comp plan. So anyways, this is again some stats about, the completion rate, where we are. So I'm just going to present to you the ones that you probably already are aware of. So policy 7.2 was adopted. At the tail end of that process was inserted, and there wasn't a program definition in the comprehensive plan, just the policy. So I've been reporting to you these last couple of years about how we've been implementing this policy, which was to do these historic resource evaluations every time somebody comes in seeking to, demolish a home, or sometimes people are going to sell a property, and they want to know, it says potentially historic, but is it really historic? And so we engage a consultant to prepare these historic resource evaluations. So the note here, as far as what our progress is, says just that. We began this implementation in January 2018, and we try to present a summary of these properties that we do evaluations of. So we're developing quite a list. And as we go forward, we put notes on our GIS system that states that now we've determined that it is not California Register eligible, or we have determined that it is California Register eligible. So we'll make that change in our system so folks can see that in the community. Let's see. Here's another couple of programs. This one is to update and maintain the city's historic resource inventory. And there it is in black and white. We have not updated the list. It would require council action for us to do this. They haven't given us the go-ahead. This is what I just finished saying, that when we do find that they're California Register eligible, we will make note in our system. Then this program here, 712, is to reassess the ordinance to ensure its effectiveness. I laugh because ensure its effectiveness is, maybe increase its effectiveness would be a better way of saying that. We haven't begun. The comp plan program 781 is to promote and expand available incentives. So just this gives some notes about what we accomplished. We did make those code changes that I reported out at our retreat last year, that we added categories 3 and 4 to the inventory categories that could availed themselves on our incentives, such as increased floor area and others. And then we also have this subdivision incentive for historic preservation, and we modified it just this year for the 874 Boyce project, which you all who were here got to see. So the sister homes, you might recall. And so we changed our zoning code and our subdivision code to enable a project when the front property is the one with the historic home, because the way it had been written before, it was the rear property that was to have the historic home. And in this case, there wasn't a rear property. So now that's available to folks. Then here's another one that talks about salvage and reuse. We do have a deconstruction ordinance that is coming online, going to be effective in a few months from now. So we no longer going to be saying demolition. It'll all be deconstruction. And two more that talk about historic preservation specifically. This one here, 783, talks about innovative ways to apply current codes to older buildings using the state historic building code. And we did talk about this at our retreat in 2019. We had our chief building official come and give a presentation on the historic building code. And then this one, which is parking exceptions for historic buildings. We haven't begun that program. Then two more, expanding, let's see, I've already said this, right? Okay, this one, yes, there's one more. Okay, so these are other policies that I think the HRB is interested in, and we have an ARB award, so some of you may not know this, but this is the year, 2020, is our, every 5 years, we give out the Architectural Review Awards, and so it's the ARB that does the work to come up with, 5 or more projects that the ARB has reviewed. In the past, there have been projects that the HRB also reviewed that made it to the top of the list. One of those was the Rinconada Library that did an addition that was very compatible. So it's possible that there'll be some projects that rise to the top of that list that will have a historic component. And those are in the ARB bylaws. I know that HRB has maybe in the past expressed an interest for some kind of awards. We can talk about that perhaps at a retreat if we want to embark upon that, maybe a different type of set of awards. Another one that the HRB has expressed interest in is the Fry's, the old cannery that was found to be California Register eligible this year in 2019. So this is one of these programs, is to prepare a coordinated area plan for the North Ventura area. And so that's in progress, and you might be following that. Finally, there's another one that perked my interest, and that was the Cal Ave area. There is a program that talks about create regulations to encourage retention and rehabilitation of smaller buildings. We were just talking about rehabilitation. So we don't really have a program going right now on this. Again, if somebody were to come in Cal Ave and there was a building that was older building and they wanted to demolish it or deconstruct it, we would do the same thing we're doing elsewhere in town, which is to have a historic resource evaluation done to see if it was worthy of California Register listing. And I think that concludes all of that. As far as the comp plan, then I have some more stats here about the housing activity and the building permits issued. So again, our RENA allocation is pretty high. We have a lot of units to go to get to our prior RENA allocation. This kind of shows where we've accomplished. Because we have accomplished above moderate housing units at the rate of 72%, we are okay as far as this SB 35, which you might have heard about. But this gets into weeds that the HRB purview doesn't really cover, so I'll just gloss over this. I think that pretty much sums up the other annual reports that I thought HRB might have interest in. Does anybody have any questions regarding at least the historic preservation programs that I've gone through?
So I had sent Vin information about the training I have done for the last year, and should other board members do the same? Send it to him and he can...
Yes, to Vin or myself. Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. This is an aside, because Debbie and I and Kristen were newly appointed, the city clerk reminded us that we were required to have ethics training, because that's required every 2 years, fill out Schedule 700, which all board members should have received an email from the city clerk about. And I'm just bringing that up because we're required to do those things as part of our, I think it's part of our activity as a City of Palo Alto board. So just a reminder, the ethics program is now a fascinating 2-hour read online. And it's 2 hours.
When's the due date on that?
Well, the last time I had done this was January of 2018. And I did it here with the city provided ethics training, a Brown Act training. And so that's how I knew. But because we were reappointed, they just made us do it as part of our reappointment. So if you haven't done ethics training in a while, probably. I've never done it. Oh, no, you've done it. All right. Thank you, Amy, for that.
Could I just clarify so I'm sure I understand and everyone understands? I think you have to do the Form 700 every year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
I think the city clerk's office tracks that because that's where I got the email from, but that was part of our reappointment or appointment. So, and that's a very easy thing to do because they've now got it all online and they keep your prior history there so you can just update it or if it doesn't change. Okay, thank you. Do we want to talk about, at this point, about board retreat topics? Because that's part of this?
Yes, it was a potential topics and, when do we want to have that retreat? I do have, I believe I'll have an item for the end of March. The CLG report, as I mentioned, but there might be another actual project item. We might have another nomination of, we have an exciting proposal for another, upgrade, category upgrade. So that may be coming at the end of March. So we could look maybe towards April as a potential retreat month, or
So
May.
do we want to set a date and then talk about topics? Or,
Yes, if you set a date first, or at least a month, then we can consider, what might be of interest between now and then that we want to pull together items on.
so I missed the second item in our agenda, which is meeting schedule and assignments. And so maybe we ought to go, while we're looking at dates, let's go through this. I have a number of meetings that I will miss because I'll be traveling, sadly. I'm not sad I'm traveling, but sad I'm missing the meetings. I will not be here for the March 12th meeting, the April 9th meeting, May 14th, June 11th, August 13th, and September 24th. I'll send this to Vin and you, Amy, so you know. Any other board members that know they will be traveling on any of the dates should send that to Vin and Amy so that we are sure we have a quorum. And please, when Vin sends out information asking about meetings, confirm that you're going to be there so we know that we will have a quorum. because it is difficult. I mean, we don't have a lot of meetings, and I want to be sure that we get, if there is information that we need to review, that we're all available, or as many as possible. Okay, so maybe the 26th of March is the date you think you'll have something for us? So we could do April 23rd for a retreat?
Are there others who know they will not be here on that? Because for the retreats, we definitely, I think, want to have the entire
Yeah,
full board.
Exactly.
I'm still formulating my travel plans to Italy. It'd be probably in April, but I don't have anything, nothing's confirmed yet.
Certainly,
get a
there's no trouble targeting the May retreat, but, if we wanted to do a grant submittal before, we don't have to have a retreat to move forward with that grant. If
Yeah.
we're concerned about that, there can be other things that we do on that.
I think we dealt with that last year. I mean, there's strong board support last year for that, so I think we could move forward. It'd be nice to talk about it at a retreat, but better to put the grant in. Anyone else have any problematic dates?
So
Which date is it?
April 23rd? I can come, but it's very difficult for me. So if anyone else has a problem, maybe we could consider a different date.
May 28th? May 28th. You wouldn't be there. The only two dates in March and April that I have are the 26th of March and the 23rd of April, and that's difficult do we have to do it on a Thursday?
No, we can choose another date. It's just that, we have these dates all set up in the system, and we have the room, and, I mean, we don't have to even have it here. We can have it in a more special location, retreatful place. In past retreats, we've enjoyed having them in the community room, or one time it was at a member's house that's a historic home.
Mr. Chair, so I know I'm available in March.
You are or not?
I am available for retreat in March.
March 26th, I can't do.
I can't do March 26th either.
So I'm out of country from the 11th to the 21st, but I can pretty much do anything else in March. But those are so that's the first Thursday, the second Thursday, which is the 12th, I won't be here. But if we want to do a different day,
And the May 23 date didn't work.
May
20.
that works for me. May 28th. No, Michael won't be here.
What happened to April, the April dates? We've got the 9th and the 23rd. I don't,
9th and the 23rd, I'll be out of town on the 9th.
oh, you said you were out. Okay.
I'm here, but that's difficult for
But
Debbie.
I could come.
It seems like it's better to start doing it in the spring, because in summer, everyone's really gone.
Yeah, it's really tough in
So-
the summer.
Or May 28th is also a possible date. It looks like April 23rd or May 28th.
Yeah, Kristen, you can't do April 23rd? Is that what you said? I'm sorry.
No,
Does April 23rd work? If
I
Debbie,
think it's May 28th, isn't it? January, February, March, April.
Martin? You don't know yet.
I don't know yet, but again, we don't need there can be 6 out of 7 that can.
Oh, but we would miss you. Should we target the 23rd of April and then circle back if somebody, Martin may be here. let's try that, because I know, that's no choice.
I can communicate with this from there.
Okay, let's tentatively set it for the 23rd of April, and please keep in touch with Amy and Vin if that changes. Actually, Martin, you could confirm when you know.
Is that typically a full day, or?
No, we meet for what, 2 hours? It depends on how much we have to talk about.
You can choose more or less and meaty or less meaty topics for your retreat, and thereby regulate the, how long you're here.
Sure. Okay, Martin.
Yeah, Amy, do you know from if any board member who's not present in Palo Alto, can they participate this way on an HRB retreat? Do you know? Or is that a question I need to ask some other department?
There's been participation, I know in the past, by Skype, like for council meetings, somebody participating remotely, but they have to, if you were in a hotel in Italy, it has to be a public place that people can come into. So I don't know if you open your hotel room and put a sign on the door,
Go sit in the coffee shop.
How about Piazza della Signoria?
Yeah, absolutely.
That could work. We'd be happy to be virtually there with you if that turned out that way.
Actually, I'd be happy to be there.
No, I think that's better.
Yeah, let's all go to.
Yeah. Board member Pease was asking, where's that meeting going to be?
Okay, not to prolong this, because some people actually have to work. So I think that takes care of item number 2 and item number 3. We are on to item number...
I should say then, sorry, on that retreat, because we haven't talked about potential retreat topics, we could defer that discussion because of the retreat date being in April. We could talk about that in March as far as retreat topics for April. That
Okay,
works
good
for
idea. Let's put that on the agenda. And
Well, does anyone have any ideas? Let's just poll everyone and see if anyone has any ideas for the retreat.
the 3 that I just jotted down, we should consider HRB nominations to the ARB for recognition award. We should discuss mid-century modern surveys, as we have previously, just get that back on the record. We ought to do, also reiterate our support for finishing the Mills Act program. Martin, any?
Oh, yeah, I agree with your last suggestion.
Any other suggestions?
Well,
are-
wasn't there some interest in accessory dwelling units again, to get some further clarification on that?
What do you want to know? Yeah. What do you want to know? No, I mean, I'm working on 2 or 3 of them, so if you have any questions, I can.
Yeah, Michael, are you feeling you would like to have a presentation on what the regulations now are and what the city is reviewing,
An
how many are
update?
coming forward?
Yeah, some type of update.
Okay, updates, we can do that. Also, today we had a property owner talking about a certain code section, and Martin, board member Bernstein, commented something about being interested in learning more about that.
Yeah, I just read that. I just read that code section. Looks like there's some topic for debate on that.
What is it?
Section 18.
Right. What's the title of it, and what's the focus?
The focus is what to do with an addition that is considered non-habitable, but it helps with egress and it might affect historical restoration. That's what that paragraph talks about.
Yeah, we probably we could put that on there too. Anything else? No. Okay. I think we're...
Any of these programs here? We talked about this last year, but there's, these comp plan programs related to historic preservation, if there's any interest in discussing any of these, learning more, whatever.
I think that, yes, that the inventory update and maintain the city historic resource inventory. I mean, I think that should be on the top of our list. However, I'm not sure how much we can accomplish in a retreat versus is this really a staff required job? I don't know. I mean, the two things that stand out in my mind are pushing the Mills Act forward and updating our inventory, because we've been talking about those for a long time.
We have been getting requests for these living units that are, 800 square feet,
Yeah.
and there's no rule about them. We're now working on two where the house, this house is part of the whole structure, but you can't, there's no connection between the two. And a lot of them the homes are in the back, or in the old garage. I mean, it's going to change the look of a lot of the homes in Palo Alto, because there's going to be at least two units there in almost all these homes. There's a lot of people are out there building them, so it's going to have an impact on historic homes, I think, fairly soon. Just to let you know it's coming. Because it's turning out to be a very popular item to do.
So I have that on the list of potential topics to do an overview of the accessory dwelling units at the retreat. We can further winnow this down, or at the March meeting, if you'd like, as a board.
Let's get together and talk. Okay.
Are you having a secret meeting? Is that what you said?
Yeah, very secret. That's why I said it so quietly. Yeah, I don't know. The microphone, I'm sure, didn't pick that up. Let's move on, unless there are other comments. That's already a big list, so we'll try to winnow it down a little bit. Last item is number 5, minutes. Approval of minutes from December 12th, 2019 meeting. I had found one item, Amy, a name that is spelled wrong or is not the right name, on page 68 of the packet. It's way in the back. The second to the last paragraph, under Chair Bauer, it says Hartford Day School, and it's actually, I think, Harker Day School. It's used to be Harker, there used to be a Harker, I think it was Boys Academy, but I know it's not Hartford, so I think it's Harker. Remember that, Kristen?
Yeah, I do.
Is that the right?
I think it was Harker, but I don't know
Yeah,
about
and
the
then
boys part. So.
Yeah, it was demolished, and now and Eichler Eichler style housing was built in that space. That's the only thing I would ask to be corrected. Anybody else have any corrections, additions, deletions? Okay, if seeing no further response, motion to approve? Do you hear a motion? To approve?
I move to approve the minutes that include the comments that Chair Bauer just mentioned.
Okay. Second?
I second.
All right. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Okay, unanimous. And
Can I add something about that? Not the minutes themselves, but those minutes happen to be about 840 Kipling. That item has been called up for hearing on the variance request. So it's going to the Planning and Transportation Commission, as well as the individual review hearing request. So we can let you know as that progresses, because eventually the variance request does appear on a council agenda.
right. Would it be worthwhile for me or another board member to appear before the planning hearing?
yeah, I'm not sure what it might be. I'm not sure. I have to review what the request was about, if it had something to do with historic. Certainly, the variance findings for that had to do with, I mean, the findings may have some discussion about the historic benefit of saving the home. I can't recall off the top of my head, but just to
Yeah.
let you know about that.
Yeah, Martin might know something about this. It is a complicated project because of the redwood trees and because there is a lot line offset which,
Probably shouldn't be talking about it too much
Right,
because of the, yeah, we don't want
all
to.
right, well, let's catch up with this in our other meeting. All right, so we're down to subcommittee items. There are none. Since the only subcommittee that still is in existence, or was in existence, was the 527 Waverly Subcommittee for the tile work, and that project is over. There's still the Mills Act Subcommittee, but nothing going on there. Any board member questions, comments, announcements? There is next week. 2 weeks from now, there is a California Preservation Foundation seminar in Mountain View, which is
Yeah.
pretty good.
I'm planning on going to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll go because I was going to be out of town, but now I'm not. We're not traveling. Thursday the 20th. Thursday? Yeah, good. So maybe we'll see each other. Yeah. Michael?
Yeah. I sat in on the webinar yesterday put on by California Preservation Foundation on Secretary of the Interior Standards 45 years later. I don't know if anybody else. I did. I thought it was pretty good seminar. It kind of was complimentary to the one on the 20th, I think. So.
If you have the time, they also have a webinar on contextual infill, which I watched in December, I think. It was really fascinating, and it talks about the impact of building new projects next to historic properties.
Right, that was similar to this.
Yeah, so it's worth it. It's very short. I think it's 2 hours.
Is the opening or the position for a preservation planner, is that still something the city is seeking? Because I was approached by a person who might be interested in it.
It's not an advertised position at this time. We're kind of continuing our practice of using our consultant.
So
And
I can refer this person to you, Amy.
if they want to come forward and have a conversation with me, I'm happy to do so.
Okay.
Any other comments? I'd like to say that some of us went to the Junior Museum after our last meeting, and it was really it is a fabulous space. It's going to be an amazing addition to Palo Alto's cultural opportunities. Really, really impressive. So I'm hoping when it's all done, we'll all be invited to come to the opening, to the dedication ceremony. I'm sure we will, because we weighed in on it. Anyway, if there are no other comments or announcements.
I wanted to mention, because you mentioned that, I got an email from the President Hotel. Did you guys all get that email about having a tour? Maybe, is that something we would do together or separate? I glanced at it. I didn't really read about it, but it's the people who have taken over the President Hotel, and they're remodeling it, or and they invited, maybe they invited me because I went to an open house thing that they had there.
I got the note about it too.
I didn't have
Should
any.
should I share that with everyone, or how?
Yeah, they had reached out to get everybody's contact information, so that sounds like what they're doing
Yes.
is reaching out individually. I mean, we would be, this project is going to come to the board, their proposals for that building, so it's up to you what you want to do, but if there was interest in a group tour, we could certainly agendize that and post it and all of that.
Or let's do it in less than quorum numbers, as we've done in the past. Just do 3 and 3, or 2 and 2, or 3.
However.
Yeah, I'd like to see the building. I think it would be helpful to tour it. We did that with the Varsity Theater renovations 5 years ago, the second version. We went in 2 different groups.
Did anyone not get that email?
I didn't get it.
Oh, so maybe I'll forward it to all of you individually.
Good
And then,
idea. Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, I wouldn't mind going as a group. I think,
Well, then you have, if we all go together.
Is that a
we
problem?
it
I
has
know we have to
it's
advertise
It's a
it.
public meeting.
would
Has
that
to
be
be
a problem?
It's not a problem. I think I'd want to come too.
Yeah, I think we should just,
And the planner would probably want to come too, so.
yeah, I think it's good to go as a group because then we all hear the same information.
That's fine. I mean,
Should we-
it's just a little more complicated for
Could do it on
Amy,
retreat day.
the notice.
It's a field trip.
We could.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
if, Margaret, would you like to coordinate that with Amy?
Yes, I would.
Okay. And then we'll hear from you, or Vin. All right, if there are no other announcements or comments, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming. I appreciate having you all here.